They laughed when she mopped the floor. They called her trash, filthy, and just a maid. But that afternoon, in front of everyone, she walked to the Millionaire's private office, typed a code no one else knew, and the steel door clicked open. What she pulled from the safe made the entire boardroom stand in shock, because the woman they mocked was about to own everything they thought she didn't deserve. Angela arrived at Sterling and Price Holdings every morning before sunrise, long before the marble floors gleamed and the elevators hummed with executives. Her uniform was always pressed, her shoes clean, her afro neatly tucked under a modest scarf. She moved like background music, present, reliable, unnoticed. At 43, Angela had worked in luxury buildings, banks, even a courthouse, but none as polished and intimidating as this one. On paper, she was just a cleaning lady, but her eyes told another story. Calm, intelligent, and observant. She didn't speak unless spoken to, and even then, her words were soft and measured. The employees barely noticed her until they did. Ugh! She left streaks on the glass again. One voice sneered. Madison, a junior analyst barely 24, rolled her eyes as she sipped iced caramel coffee. Shouldn't people like her be cleaning motels? Derek, the CEO's nephew, cocky, loud, and entitled, chimed in, Bet she can't even spell Sterling. Probably thinks it's a rapper. Laughter echoed as Angela wiped the glass doors, silent, her hands steady. She heard everything. She always did, but she never flinched. She just kept cleaning. Behind her back, they called her Filthy Angie, mocked her broken-down shoes, whispered that she probably lived in shelter. They didn't know she had once sat in boardrooms, not just cleaned them. They didn't know she could remember every name, every password, and every corner of the building. Even the ones they weren't allowed in, they didn't know. But they were about to find out. Angela had just finished buffing the glass conference room door when she heard footsteps behind her. Oops. Madison gasped with a smirk as her coffee cup slipped from her hand, splattering dark liquid across the freshly shined floor and across Angela's shoes. Oh, no. Looks like we need to mop Queen again, she laughed, tossing the empty cup toward the trash. It bounced off the rim and landed inches from Angela's feet. Derek clapped mockingly. What's the matter, Angie? That uniform too clean for coffee stains. Angela calmly bent down, picked up the cup, and dropped in the trash. She didn't say a word, didn't even look at them. You know, Derek continued, walking a slow circle around her like a predator sizing prey. Some folks just don't belong in a building like this. Bet she thinks the executive floor is a fantasy. Angela quietly reached for the mop. Her hands were steady, her face unreadable. Madison leaned closer. You're lucky Mr. Sterling pities people like you. If this were up to me, I'd have your badge deactivated and sent you back to whatever bus station you came from. Angela didn't flinch, but her eyes flicked up, and in that moment, just for a second, they caught something unusual. Mr. Sterling, the CEO himself, standing at the end of the hallway. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't angry either. He was watching her. Not like you watch a janitor, like you study a chess piece, like you're waiting to see if it moves. Angela held his gaze for a moment, then looked away and resumed cleaning the mess, wordlessly. Derek and Madison didn't even notice him. They turned and walked away laughing. But as Angela turned the corner, she slid a thin, silver key card from her pocket. Not the kind janitors carry. This one had a gold stripe. She tucked it quickly beneath her cleaning gloves and kept walking, because Angela knew something they didn't. This building still remembered her, and so did the man who owned it. The janitor's closet was small, windowless, cramped, but Angela had made it hers. On one rusted locker door, a photo was carefully taped, slightly faded, edges curling. A young black girl in a deep blue graduation gown stood smiling, her arms thrown proudly around Angela's waist. The words summa cum laude, Columbia Law, were barely visible on the sash. Angela's hand lingered on the photo. Her fingers trembled for a moment, then curled into a fist. Inside her locker, tucked behind cleaning supplies, were three things most employees would never expect. A dusty glass award engraved with Outstanding Strategy, A. Brooks, VP Division Head, A folded letter on company stationery signed by Arthur Sterling, and an old key fob, long inactive, or so they thought. She sat for a moment on the bench, staring down at her scuffed boots, remembering a time when they were polished heels walking confidently across executive boardrooms. Just then, the door creaked open. Miss Harriet, the HR assistant, in her late 50s, kind, soft-spoken, peeked in. I, just needed some paper towels. Mind if I? Angela nodded. Help yourself. Harriet paused. Her eyes drifted toward the award, half covered under a rag. You used to be someone, didn't you? She said softly, like a secret. Angela didn't answer. You don't talk much, Harriet added, grabbing the towels. But I've seen Mr. Sterling look at you. Not like the others. Like he owes you something. Angela just smiled faintly, lips tight. When Harriet left, Angela stood slowly, walked the wall, and ran her fingers across the faded award plaque. Her reflection blinked back at her through the dusty glass. Not a maid. Not anymore. Just a woman waiting for the right moment to take her seat back at the table. The next morning, the building buzzed with quiet chatter. In the security room, a motion sensor alert had flagged unusual access at 10:47 p.m. Angela, the janitor, entering the CEO's private office. Not the cleaning area. Not a conference room. The office. The one with triple-coded locks and biometric scanners. The guards had reviewed the footage twice, even zoomed in to confirm her badge ID. There she was, uniform, calm, punching in a code like she'd done 1,000 times. The door slid open without hesitation. But when Madison overheard it from her boyfriend, one of the overnight texts, the rumor spread like spilled ink. Wait, what? The maid went into Mr. Sterling's office? At night, maybe she needed air freshener. Derek mocked with a snort. Or maybe she's stocking up on toilet paper, Madison added. Gotta keep those Section 8 shelves full. The group burst into laughter near the vending machine. By lunch, half the interns were whispering about it. But what stunned them most was that security said nothing. No alarm, no investigation, no memo, no suspension. Angela was still there the next morning, quietly mopping the marble floor like nothing had happened. Derek couldn't let it go. Who gave her that code? He muttered to Madison as they watched her from across the hallway. She's just a maid, Madison hissed. She shouldn't even know where that office is, let alone walk into it like she owns it. Angela looked up briefly, not at them, but beyond them, as if hearing a sound only she recognized. Her gaze lingered, then dropped back to her work. But behind her cleaning cart, a thin, square glint of plastic stuck out her back pocket, a gold access badge no janitor had. Derek narrowed his eyes. Something didn't add up, and the more they watched her, the more they began to realize maybe Angela wasn't who they thought she was at all. By Thursday morning, the whispers had turned into plans. Derek leaned over Madison's desk with a crooked grin. Tonight's the staff mixer. Everyone be there, perfect crowd. Madison raised an eyebrow. You thinking what I'm thinking? Let's give the maid her moment, he smirked. Little spill on the floor, a missing watch, and boom, security alert. She'll be out of here by midnight. Angela, just down the hall cleaning the glass partitions, heard every word. But, like always, she didn't react. That evening, the building lobby shimmered with warm lighting and champagne flutes. The interns stood in clusters, laughing and tossing glances toward the janitor with the mop. Looks like she dressed for the occasion, Madison sneered. Angela wore the same navy blue uniform she always did, spotless, neat, and unbothered. As the party flowed upstairs, Derek waited for the moment to strike. He bumped into Angela near the elevators and loudly exclaimed, Hey, has anyone seen my watch? Expensive one. Real gold. He turned to the crowd, smirking. Hope no one cleaned it up. Snickers rippled through the group. Angela remained quiet. Then a familiar chime. The elevator doors slid open. Everyone turned. Mr. Sterling stood inside, tall, composed, dressed in his usual gray suit. His eyes scanned the group. And then he spoke. Ms. Angela, the board is waiting for you in my office. A silence fell like thunder. Angela stepped forward calmly, without a word, and walked into the elevator. The doors closed. Derek's jaw hung open. Madison blinked, speechless. A glass clinked to the floor in the silence. From that moment, nothing and no one looked at Angela the same way again. The elevator glided upward in silence. Angela didn't speak. She didn't need to. Mr. Sterling stood beside her, hands clasped, eyes forward. As the doors opened onto the top floor, he gestured toward the glass-walled boardroom at the end of the corridor. "Whenever you're ready," he said softly. Inside, the board members stood as Angela entered, not because of her uniform, but because of who she was. A heavy silence filled the room. Angela took off her cleaning gloves, folded them neatly, and placed it beside the folder waiting at her seat, her old seat. The placard still read Angela Brooks, co-founder and strategic director. 10 years ago, she had helped build Sterling and Price from the ground up, before the marble floors, before the gold-lettered signs. Back when they shared a single-floor office with 3 desks and a coffee pot, Angela had been the mind behind the mergers, the voice in the pitches, and the heart of the culture. She built this company not for status, but for legacy. But that legacy shattered the day Jonathan, her husband and co-founder, was killed in a plane crash en route to a client meeting. Angela vanished from the company the very next week. Grief had silenced the brilliance that once commanded boardrooms. And when she finally returned 2 years later, it wasn't with fanfare or title. It was with a mop and a plan. She saw what had become of the place: arrogance, elitism, entitlement. The interns treated janitors like dirt. Executives rolled their eyes at receptionists. It wasn't the company she helped build. Not anymore. Mr. Sterling, Jonathan's childhood best friend, had begged her to return. But Angela had one condition. Let me see it from the bottom. No name tags. No perks. Just floor-level reality. So he did. And for the last 6 months, she watched it all. The fake smiles, the whispered insults, the quiet cruelty. She documented everything. Tonight, she opened a folder and slid it across the table. Inside, footage of Derek mocking employees' audio of Madison's slurs complaints. HR had buried a list of every employee who showed silent kindness, and those who didn't. The board members read in stunned silence. Angela stood. "This company used to stand for people," she said. Her voice was low but firm. Not privilege, not pedigree. People. One of the older board members, who had once mentored her, lowered his gaze in shame. "I lost my husband," she continued, "but I won't lose the company we built together. Not to poison disguised as ambition." Mr. Sterling stepped beside her, his voice firm now. "As of this moment, Angela Brooks is reinstated as Chief Strategic Officer, with full executive power." Applause didn't follow. Respect did. Silent, heavy, earned. Angela looked through the glass. Well, down at the mixer below, where Derek and Madison were still laughing, unaware their careers were about to end. She didn't smile. This wasn't revenge. This was reclamation. Downstairs, the mixer was still in full swing. Music, laughter, and expensive wine flowing freely. Derek leaned against the hors d'oeuvres table, bragging to 2 junior analysts about his executive bloodline. Madison scrolled through her phone, snapping selfies, oblivious to what was coming. The elevator dinged. Angela stepped out first, not in a janitor uniform, in a Navy power suit, tailored, elegant, commanding. Behind her, Mrs. Sterling followed, flanked by 2 security officers and a senior HR rep. Conversations died mid-sentence. A few glasses froze midair. The music still played, but no one heard it anymore. Angela walked directly toward Derek and Madison. They exchanged nervous glances, their smiles faltering. "What's this?" Derek scoffed, forcing a laugh. "Dress-up day?" Angela said nothing. She raised her phone. Tap play. A recording echoed through the room. Derek's voice. "She probably thinks Sterling is a rapper." Then Madison's voice, crystal clear. "If this were up to me, I'd have her badge deactivated and send her back to whatever bus station she came from." Gasps filled the room. Angela swiped again, security footage. Madison intentionally dropping coffee. Derek miming wiping shoes on Angela's back. More laughter. More humiliation. Mr. Sterling stepped forward. Derek. Madison. You're both terminated, effective immediately. But Madison choked. That's taken out of context, Derek stammered. You can't just, I'm your nephew. Mr. Sterling's eyes narrowed. Exactly. And that's why this is happening here, now, and in front of everyone. Angela turned to crowd. I didn't ask for their respect, she said quietly. I just wanted their decency. No one clapped. No one dared. Because in that moment they knew she wasn't just a maid. She was a storm they never saw coming. The room remained frozen, stunned by what they had witnessed. Angela stepped forward, standing beneath the crystal chandelier, once reserved for executive speeches. But this time, the quiet weight of her words outshone the room's luxury. I came back not to punish anyone, she began, her voice calm, steady. I came to see if the company my husband and I built still remembered what it stood for. Eyes fixed on her. I cleaned floors to see whose minds needed cleaning more. She let that line settle in the air. Respect isn't something earned by salary brackets. And character isn't proven by LinkedIn bios. It shows in the way you treat the people you think you'll never need. No applause, just silence. The kind that comes when truth cuts deeper than sound. Every day I mopped these floors. Someone called me filthy. And every day I watched, not out of anger, but out of hope that someone would speak up. A kind word, a simple gesture. Most didn't. She looked directly at the crowd, not in anger, but in something heavier, disappointment. But some of you did, she said, glancing at the receptionist, a shy intern who had always smiled at her. And those people they'll be leading tomorrow. Just then, the back door opened. A young woman entered in a crisp suit. Her face lit up the moment she saw Angela. It was her daughter, Maya Brooks, newly accepted intern at Price Law Group, wearing a lanyard with the company logo. She crossed the room with pride, hugging her mother in front of the entire crowd. Angela's eyes glistened, not with anger, but with fulfillment. Mr. Sterling stepped forward again, this time with a different energy. Angela, he said, this company lost its soul when you stepped away. We want you back, permanently, as Executive Director of Culture and Operations. The crowd didn't clap. They stood, not out of formality, but out of something real, something missing for a long time. Respect. Months passed, and Sterling and Price didn't just recover, it evolved. Angela's return sparked a ripple effect throughout the company. Within weeks, HR policies were overhauled, mandatory diversity and respect training for all staff, with a new zero-tolerance clause for workplace harassment. Every employee, regardless of rank, now attended a monthly ethics seminar. But it wasn't punishment, it was restoration. The dusty old break room Angela once hid was transformed into a fully equipped employee wellness lounge, open to everyone, from janitorial staff to junior analysts to executives. Angela oversaw the creation of a leadership from the ground up training center, where overlooked employees were encouraged to learn new skills, shadow senior staff, and earn advancement opportunities. Within 90 days, 4 cleaning staff had been promoted, including a former night shift janitor who now ran facilities management. The company culture shifted, not through fear, but through example. And then, one quiet Monday afternoon, Angela saw a familiar face standing awkwardly in the lobby. Derek. His suit was wrinkled, his hair no longer slicked back with entitlement. He clutched a small folder and an apology written more on his face than in his hands. I'm not here to ask for my job back, he said before Angela could speak. I just came to say I was wrong. Angela didn't smile. She didn't scold. She simply nodded. You want to change? She said softly. Then start where I did. Downstairs. Derek hesitated, then nodded slowly. And weeks later, he was spotted helping the facilities team organize supply rooms. No cameras, no recognition, just quiet work. Angela never told anyone to forgive him, but she let the building decide who he'd become. Because change isn't a press release. It's what happens when no one's watching. Power isn't in how loud you speak or how high you stand. It's in how low you're willing to stoop to lift someone else up. Angela never raised her voice. She didn't need to. Her silence held more weight than their cruelty ever could. Because sometimes the strongest people aren't the ones at the top. They're the ones you walk past, overlook, or laugh at, until the day they remind you exactly who they are. Speech Balloon if this story touched your heart. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Loudspeakers share this with someone who's ever been underestimated. Movie camera, and remember, kindness doesn't cost a thing, but cruelty always collects interest.